So today we're going to talk about branding, the basics of branding, how to get branded and execute it well, and then also how to transition sometimes to a new brand or a new position. Because all of us, whether in our personal life or in our business life, are always evolving in some sense. And if you just look at outwardly, in the world's evolving constantly. I mean, 10 years ago, Microsoft ruled the world. And then Google kind of knocked them off. And then Facebook comes along. So we're seeing at a pace of change that we've never witnessed before. And so to remain relevant, we always have to look at ourselves and say, are we staying congruent and true to what we began with? Does this make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yes?
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm going to start with something that this is my gospel according to Phil, and it's what I call the pivot point. And if you go to tungstenbranding.com, I have a couple of articles on it, or just Google tungsten branding pivot point. Your pivot point is that set of talents, abilities, and attributes that you have, that special sauce, the Colonel's Kentucky Fried Chicken recipe. It's that special, unique combination of your assets and abilities around which all of your goods and services revolve. So if you think of a pivot point, put a little pin in the middle of a paper, tie a string to it, and draw a big circle. Imagine within that circle is all your goods and services and product offerings. That's your wheelhouse. That's the things that you should be offering. And the center of that pin is your pivot point. And it's not really a mission statement. It's just it's your reason for being. It's the thing that motivates you, the thing that gets you up in the morning, and the thing that drives your brand identity, whether it's your personal brand or your business brand. And one of the biggest disconnects I see is when people happen into a business because of timing or because of a special talent, and they kind of one person I can think of in particular was really good at writing resumes, and then became so well known for writing resumes they got pigeonholed in that. And that really wasn't her gift. She was far beyond that. She was more of an intuitive counselor, and she could read people, and that's what made her so good at resume writing. But instead, the mistake that people get is they get behind their product or service and identify with the product or service until they become pigeonholed or go into some kind of a cul-de-sac and can't get out of it. So then you become the resume queen, and then you're constantly saying, well, I do more than that. And one of the biggest symptoms of misbranding is when you say, my name is this, or but I'm way more than that. Has anybody ever been caught in that trap? Yes.
Yeah.
I take it from the laugh that we've been in that painful place. There was a chain down in Clearwater, Florida, where I had my ad agency for 17 years, and this is so symptomatic of and emblematic of what I'm talking about. They created a whole brand called Just Breaks, and as they evolved and offered more goods and services and branded around the service instead of around the attributes behind the service, they grew and did more and more offerings. And then to compensate for it, they had to buy an expensive ad campaign with a jingle, and the jingle was, at Just Breaks, we're more than just breaks. And Burlington Coat Factory, we're more than just coats. So, when you go to create a position and you step back a little bit from your brand, you want to take kind of that 20,000-foot view and say, I am more than my product and service. So as I build this and I create a foundation, I'm going to drill down first and get down into the granite before I build up. So as this thing builds in the future, I don't get 2 stories up and it starts to collapse because it's built on a temporary service. Marnie has experienced this with all the Google stuff, correct, Marnie?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so, Google has gone through all kinds of iterations of what they deem as important or what makes you rank, and live by the sword, die by the sword. If you were constantly trying to build a business based on what Google thinks is good today, you'd be out of business tomorrow because they're going to change it. So we will look for those timeless things when we create our pivot point. One of the things that I did when I started my ad agency, I was trying to create this notion that I wanted to bring clarity and insight into people's lives and into their identity. So we created the brand of tungsten, the element in a light bulb, as a metaphor for bringing insight. Other companies might call themselves the name-brainers or the storming name-brainers, and all these kind of literal constructions that leave you doing just the skill set You're always delivering. Have any of you ever been caught where you just feel like you're just being worked to death for your skill set and people aren't seeing the bigger value in what you do?
Yep.
Is that a common trap? Because that's something that I hear constantly from my clients. People don't understand what I'm really about or get the big picture. So one of the most important things to do is to sit down and really map out and say, what is that thing that I do? What is that combination of skills and abilities that nobody else really provides in the way that I do? Everybody loves Marnie to death. There's this Marnie-ness about her. And so that's a great example. So, if you were to sit there and be a chemist and deconstruct Marnie, you would say there's this thing about Marnie. Everything that she does has these elements. So whether you think of it as a recipe, it's these ingredients that go into what you do. And as you begin to identify that, you get a clear picture of what it is that motivates you, drives you, and becomes that anchoring point from which you can then make decisions on what to include in your brand. And where people get confused is they do it backwards. They'll say, well, I got into this business. They build the idea in the business, and the business inevitably shifts. It takes another direction. Through technology or through some shift. You see this a lot with companies like the Yellow Pages. People still need to have phone numbers, but they're not going to, cut down dead trees and paint them yellow to find that information anymore. People still need information, but they're not going to look at an encyclopedia. So as you build your brand, you look for those timeless things behind it. You identify that as your pivot point. The pivot point is not necessarily your mission statement. So you look for those things that really bring forth and summarize why you're in business. One of the things I used to tell people is I create environments where people thrive. That's what I feel like I do as my pivot point. The thing that generates excitement in me is when I can help companies create identity, clarity, so that they can have an environment where their employees and their business, their financials, on every element, they're clear, focused, decisive, energetic, and that creates an environment where they can thrive. Then when I think about adding to my brand, is this new idea a match to that pivot point?